Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome to another session of our Day One and Beyond series, where we take you through various topics and activities related to building solutions on Oracle Cloud. My name is Joey, and I'll be your host and one of the presenters for today's session. This will be the sixth session of our series on the overall Oracle Analytics Cloud platform. This series is designed to help you unlock the full potential of OAC and transform your data into actionable insights. Today, we will be focusing on the semantic modeler in OAC and show you how to make it easier for users to analyze data accurately and confidently without needing to understand the underlying data structure. So today's webinar will be led by myself, Joey Hall from the Personalized Training Team, and Pete Madura. He's a Principal Cloud Architect and our Resident Analytics Expert. So what will we cover today? We'll start with a quick review of the overall Analytics Cloud platform, which may serve as a refresher to some of you if you've been on our previous sessions. We'll then dive into the semantic modeler and discuss its features and functionality. Pete will get into the console and give us a demonstration on how to build and use your own semantic models. So who's the audience for today's session? This session is for any new users to OAC that are looking to build governed data models. It's for developers with requirements that exceed the dataset's capabilities, and it's also for users who are familiar with the client administration tool and are interested in migrating to the online semantic modeler. So with that, let's get into the platform. So OAC can be thought of as a comprehensive analytics platform because it provides you with capabilities for augmented analytics, self-service analytics, and governed analytics. So all three features are each category that you see on the screen here. For augmented analytics, OAC includes built-in AI and machine learning, so it can help you uncover your insights faster with features like the natural language queries, auto-generated visualizations, as well as trend detection and anomaly detection. So anything that really allows you to interpret data without needing to build complex models or write code. So it makes it pretty easy to do those things. With self-service analytics, it empowers you to explore and visualize your data without having to heavily rely on IT. So you can connect to your different curated data sets and even upload your own things like spreadsheets. And it gives you a really interactive, intuitive drag and drop area to create your visualizations and custom dashboards as well. Beyond that, it also provides you with governed analytics. So that helps you ensure data consistency and security. This encompasses semantic modeling, which is the focus of today. And then it also helps you with different levels of security and filters and audit trails as well. A quick holistic view of the different features within the Oracle Analytics Cloud platform, you can see on the diagram here. It begins with your more technical tasks. So that will be things like connecting to your relevant data sources, modeling the physical sources into logical business views, as well as the data preparation and enrichment features. And then you go to the more business-centric tasks on the right, like exploring data and making insights, while also being able to create visual stories to share throughout collaboration with your colleagues. And again, today we're going to focus in on that model section today with the semantic modeler tool. So now let's dive into a few different core features of the tool and how you can take advantage of those. So let's begin by defining what a semantic model is and why it matters. A semantic model is essentially your bridge between the raw data and your business users. So you're able to structure your data in a more business-friendly way so that people can analyze it without needing to understand the underlying data structures, the tables, the names of those tables, or the queries that go into pulling that information. A well-designed semantic model, as you can see here, ensures that the business requirements of stakeholders are met, even if those stakeholders don't know anything about the databases or the data modeling itself. Now, the tool, the Oracle Analytics Semantic Modeler, is a browser-based modeling tool with a clean and modern UI that gives you a streamlined experience to do all of that. So a streamlined experience to create your governed semantic models, set those definitions, create those hierarchies, all so that your users can have a more seamless experience. couple key benefits of the tool and why it's a significant upgrade from older modeling tools that you may have used in the past. First, it provides that browser-based interface. So that gives you the clean navigation, and it's designed for today's analytic workflows and today's modern analytics teams. It has complete semantic modeling capabilities. That's going to be separated into 3 different layers. So it's going to be the physical diagrams, logical diagrams, and lineage diagrams. And these will help overall set those definitions, create your mappings, and as well as look at the lineage and the different hierarchies for your analytics data sets as well. Another major benefit is that it integrates natively with Git platforms like GitHub, GitLab, or Oracle Visual Builder. So it allows you to collaborate and enable version control as you develop your different analytics workflows. Now, the 3 layers that Pete's going to walk you through and show you how to set those up within the platform in our demonstration today are the physical layer to manage your data sources, the logical layer to manage that business logic, and the presentation layer to manage the user interface. So the physical layer, that's the first step, the first layer of your semantic model. And that's where you're going to define the objects and the relationships that the Oracle Analytics query engine needs to write those native queries against each physical data source that you set up. The logical layer defines the logical model of the data and specifies that mapping between the logical model and the physical schemas that you've set up. So this is going to determine the analytic behavior seen by the users and define the relationships between the objects available to them. Then the presentation layer, or the third layer, that provides a way to present the customized, secure, role-based views of the logical layer to the users. That adds that level of abstraction and the overall abstraction from the overall logical layer and provide a view of the data that the business users are going to see and interact. So here's the physical layer and what it contains. So the tables, the data sources, the aliases, the joins, and the connections to those data sources. For example, if you have the tables in the database here, you could see the different table names that you might not know what those data tables are for. Here you can create those layers to abstract from those later on. The logical layer, where we define the business logic. So those are the measures, calculated fields, aggregations, and those logical relationships. And then lastly, we have the presentation layer. So what the end user sees. This is where you're organizing all those logical objects into that user-friendly structure, or a subject area that will be what your user can select and work with within the platform itself. We'll quickly take a look at the language that the semantic modeler uses. It's a JSON-based markup language that describes an object and its elements in an SMML schema JSON file. And it's going to be declarative text-based format, similar to something like YAML or XML, that's going to represent your entire semantic model. With that, I'll let Pete kind of show you all of this within the console and set up your first semantic model. So we'll review a pre-built workbook sourced from a semantic model. We'll review the existing model, and then we'll develop a model from scratch. So that includes the setup of a system connector, the creation of a physical layer, the creation of a logical layer, and the creation of a presentation layer. So with that, I'll kick it over to Pete.
All right. Thank you so much, Joey. And thank you everyone for attending the session today. As Joey just walked you through the main components of an OAC semantic model, we're going to approach the demo in the same fashion. To build these data models is fairly linear, and each component builds upon the previous. And just before we jump into the demo, I want to let everyone know that we're not going to have time to cover every aspect of the modeler due to the limited time today, but I'll do my best to cover all the basics and as many additional features as I can. And I would consider this a level 100, trending into 200 a little bit review of the modeler. And with that, let's get out of PowerPoint. Here we are in the OAC home screen. I'm running on the May 2025 Enterprise Edition. And before we start today's session, I want to ensure that the audience is aware that the Semantic Modeler is only available on the Enterprise Edition of OAC. If you are currently on a Professional Edition, it's very easy to migrate that service into an Enterprise Edition. And also, throughout today's session, I'll be adding as many best practices, tips, and tricks. And that said, I think a good place to start is who can access the Semantic Modeler. So I did build a workbook to help us through some of the discussions today. And I'm giving you the basic system application roles within OAC. In order to utilize the semantic modeler, you need to be part of the BI data model author. You need to have that aligned to your group or your user, or you need to be a BI service admin. So those are the two modes, are the two system application roles that are required in order to access the modeler. And once you've been added to those, you can go back to the front end and you'll see the access to your semantic models right here in the main navigation. And if you come over to the create, you'll have this create semantic option for you. So before we start developing models, let's take a look at what we're going to build today. So I'm going to go back to this workbook. Just going to open it up in editor mode. And this is the subject area that we are going to create. It's going to be called corporate sales. It has one fact table, a few dimensional tables. I'll show you. So my fact table has a few measures built within it. Kind of go over to our calendar, our timetable. You can see very cleanly written. We have a hierarchy in here, a time hierarchy, which is a front-end object. We can go into customers. We've just cleaned it up, all aliased and ordered the way we want. And we also have a nested folder for countries, right? Because these countries actually relate to the customer. So I wanted to nest this folder right within my customers folder. And lastly, we have some products. And also within here, we do have a products hierarchy, and we will be building that hierarchy from scratch from within here. All right, so now let's take a look at the objects that we'll be creating today in our physical model. I'm going to come back here. It's kind of like the build tasks for each layer. I'm going to come back here for each layer. So what we'll be building is we'll set up a system connection. We'll be adding some database objects. We'll be importing some metadata. We'll do some object aliasing. We'll do some joins, and we'll take a look at the physical diagram. And that's what we're going to focus on for this physical layer. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to go back to my main screen. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to create semantic model. I'm going to call this day 1 and beyond. Now this name isn't seen by end users, so you can make this as business friendly as you want. I'm going to say create. Now, again, I'm assuming a lot of people aren't very familiar with this tool or looking to get a little more familiar. So when you first try to create a semantic model within this platform, you're given 4 different options. One, do you want to start with an empty model, right? That is nothing bare bones. That actually is what we're going to do today. So you can see how to build one up from scratch. But if you are coming from, if you've been on OAC for a while on enterprise using subject areas and using the client admin tool, well, you're going to have what's called an RPD. If you have an RPD lying around, you can import it directly into this method. It'll just basically ask for the file location and your password. So that is another way to bring in your current model into the semantic modeler. Now, again, if you're already an OAC user and you have a RPD loaded into your instance, you can simply press the import deployed model, and that will actually import whatever RPD is loaded onto the system and bring it into the semantic modeler. And then lastly, we probably won't have a lot of time to get into this day, but as Joey mentioned, this can be completely integrated with Git. And if you had set up a Git and you have synced and pushed all of your changes to it, you could actually clone your semantic model and just pull it right from your Git repo. Again, we are going to start with an empty model. I have already imported the one on here, and I'll show you that in a minute. So if I just back out of here for 1 minute and I go back to semantic models, this is the one I imported just prior to the session. If I come in here, this just shows you there's our corporate sales. These are all the layers we're going to go through. But that is the one way to bring it directly into the platform. And for those users that have never tried this and are interested in trying to import their current RPD loaded try this import deployed model. If you get any errors, please note down any errors that you may run into. And then what we're being advised to say is go create a SR, and you can have support help you understand what some of those errors are to kind of get your current model into the new semantic modeler so you can start working to get off of the client administration tool. So with that, as I mentioned, we're going to create a semantic model from scratch. So we're just going to start with an empty model. Close some of these tabs. All right. So whenever you create a model, it does create a database by default there. I'm just going to delete that. Now, every single model has to start with connections, and not just a regular connection in OAC. They're called system connections. A system connection is very similar to the normal dataset connections that you may have experienced before, except with one small difference. When I say create connection right here, so I start off on the connections tab on the far left. I do have an existing one for my existing model, but I want to create a fresh one for these purposes. I'm going to say create connection. And right now, it has automatically filtered it to all of the data sources that are available for the modeler. So not every data source can be used in this semantic modeling tool. Please check the documentation in case you're unsure of it. But when you use this method, it will show you every one that is possible. We are going to use an ADW or an Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse. And right here, this system connection box is really what we're focused on. So first I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this ADW 23AI, and we'll just call it system connection. I will bring over my wallet. I will bring over my credentials. And then we are going to make this connection. And this connection can only be utilized by the modeler because of this system connection checkbox down here. See if I've entered that all correctly. Okay, good. So we have a new connection here. And just the one thing I want to point out is this connection, you can see from the front end. If I come back to data, connections, you're going to see it there, right? I can go in and I inspect it. And you can see the system connection is set onto it. Now, when you create a data connection over here, you have, again, all of the available connectors. But you can see here, you still can create one from here. You can click the system connection box from this side, but again, it's only going to be available for the semantic modeler. So you have two kind of ways to create these system connections. So we see our new system connection right there. We know we're good to go. So let's go back over to the semantic modeler. So step one, create a system connection. Now, anything in that system connection is now will be available to the modeler. So we move into our first layer, which is called the physical layer. I'm going to start by creating a database. And this database is going to be my ADW. I'm going to say my database type is Autonomous Data Warehouse. I'm going to say OK. So we've just created a database object in the semantic modeler. We can go to the General tab, just what you just saw ago. We have our tables that we're going to add to it, right? We have on the database itself, we have a bunch of advanced features. This allows administrators to turn on and turn off and adjust different aspects of the modeler of like maybe there are some functions they don't want people running. Maybe they don't want them to ever be able to do an outer join. You can actually control a lot of those functionality within the tool going through these advanced features. Our connection pools. This is our lifeline to our connection, right? These will actually be populated automatically when we start adding tables. So we'll come back here in a minute. And query limits. You can actually set row and timeout query limits on queries that are applied to this database. So let's go back to the tables tab and let's expand. So I'm going to first go back to my connections. I'm going to expand my schema. Schemas. There's my SM demo schema. And we're just going to click all the different objects that we want to start with. Time, products, customers, countries. We're going to make this one pretty simple. So we're going to bring in 5 different physical tables into this database object. We'll let the metadata, okay, so they just got imported. It does bring over the schema because we know you might be pulling data from lots of different schema and this can help keep it organized. right? So let's go into one of our tables just so you can see it really quickly. I'm going to go into customers. So first you can see all the columns. So this is all the metadata that brought in, right? You can do this manually, but I don't advise it. It's the best practice to allow the system to import the metadata. But if your source data ever changed, or maybe some of your formats, you do have the ability to come in here and alter some of the column properties. So letting you know that you can override what's here. But again, best practice is just let the metadata import, and it will bring all this in for you. Any joins that you have that will be set up in a minute will be displayed here. We don't have any. And the other nice thing is you can preview the data right from here. Now, for those that are used to doing some data preparation tasks, this screen might be similar. Now, you don't have all the options to do these steps, but it does give you a nice view of the data, kind of what you're working with, and just some basic charts on top of each column. So it's nice to have this handy in here. And going back to the general tab, a few things I just want to mention here. One, our sources are tables. Most of your sources should be tables or materialized views, but we do have other options. If you wanted to call a stored procedure to get your SQL statement, or if you actually just want to enter a SQL statement directly in here, you have that ability. So the default, obviously, I brought in tables, so the source all defaulted to tables, but I could always add a new table and say it's a select statement. You also have your caching options for each of your different tables or objects, right? So you can have a whole different caching strategy for the different objects that you bring into your model. For this one, I'll just say do not cache. All right, we'll just save this. So now you've kind of seen that for the customers table. So now, at this point, I just want to talk a little bit about the structure and best practices with facts and dimensions. Now, this system is designed to run star schemas. Star schemas are where you have a fact table with a bunch of aggregable measures, also with foreign keys, and then you have all of your dimensional tables helping you to explain what those facts are. That is a standard star schema. Now, the best practice is also to get that data in that format in your data sources. Now, modeling data is not hard. Modeling data not properly stored is hard. So just leave that with you. The more work you can do on your data warehouse to set and have your data in a format that is ready to build star schemas off of, that will save you a ton of work. And for example, if I go into my sales table, you'll see what my fact table looks like. So right here, I basically have two fact. You can see all my foreign keys, right? I have 5 foreign keys, and I got 2 fields that I'm eventually going to aggregate. This is what a fact table should, and they're on the same granularity too. Again, if your data is not in this format, you can still use this modeler, and you can still build very powerful semantic models in subject areas. It just will be sometimes a little bit more work to get to the your end goal within here. Also, Joey, could you please post that link in the chat now? Product management has done an amazing job on not just the documentation, how to use every aspect of this modeler, but they've also given you things to think about before you're modeling, like your planning, right? When you start planning a model, you're going to want to read that documentation. It's going to give you things to think about, best practices before you ever start modeling, because just by reading that, it could save you a lot of missteps if you just dive in here without really understanding all the different aspects that you will basically need to incorporate to build a good model. Um, so just want to kind of take a minute to do that. So, and now that we've added our data, we do have a connection pool here. I'm just going to open up the connection pool. Anyone used to the client administration tool is certainly used to connection pools. The nice thing here is you can actually swap them out very easily within here. So you know I already have 2 different connections. They might be different, completely different databases, but you can actually swap them out here. And there are some other features within the connection pool that you might want to read up on. Okay, so at this point, it's all about creating aliases. Now, aliases, we want to create an alias for every object we're going to bring into our model. And there's a couple reasons for it, and it's very easy. I'm going to right click and say, create physical table alias. I'm going to call this D1 products. And I just put the asterisk or the underscore there just so it runs on the top so I can see it. Next, I'll do create another one. I'm going to call this and obviously D for dimension, D2 customers. It's going to help keep it organized. I'm going to do D3 for time. We'll do countries, and then one more after this. So this is D4, countries, and then finally we have our fact table, and I'm going to call this one F1, sales. Now you can have multiple fact tables in here, right? This platform allows and works with multiple fact tables. We are only going to have one in our example right now, but right now we've aliased everything. And why do you want to do that? And why is that a best practice? A couple reasons. One, if I go into it, I'm just going to open up the alias really quick. Changing and replacing the underlying data. Your data is going to change over time. It might change different databases, different locations, different vendors. When you set up the alias, you always have that alias object there, and all you need to do is swap out the underlying data supporting it. It could even be, some other service that you're pulling the data from, some other data source. So that replace is huge to be able to do that. Two, you're going to need to be able to create aliases for probably a lot of your scenarios, simply because I'll give you one scenario. You have two date tables, or sorry, you have one table that has multiple dates on it, but you want to join to those your calendars with those. Well, you can't join both at the same time. So you might need to create an alias for a different calendar. So maybe you want to build hierarchies on both different calendars. So again, aliases, I can't stress enough on this level. Please alias, it will save you a lot of time in the long run. Now at this point, you can see we don't have any joins, right? So in the physical layer, really the work is pulling in the objects that you want to work on, aliasing the objects, joining the aliases, and that's pretty much it. There are obviously other tasks you can do here, but certainly for level 100, level 200, that's what we want to focus on. So two ways to create joins. If I come here and I say add join, well, you always want to start with the fact table, right? I can say my sales is going out to my products. I can get my product ID, my product ID. I now have a join. Now that's one way to do it. I prefer to do it visually. I'm going to multi-select all my objects. I'm going to right click and go to the physical diagram. So within here, you can drag and drop and do everything I just did in probably a little bit easier interface. So there's my sales table. I'll put that up in a minute. I can double click it to get the columns. Products has already been joined. I can even look at the view right here, edit it if I needed to. Let's bring over customers, show you how to join. Just drag this to there. It fills in the table. Now this is just customer ID on both. We'll bring in time over here. Time ID. Time ID. And actually this country's joins to customers. So it's a little bit of a snowflake coming off of here. Now, one other thing to mention here is I've been doing all these simple joins, right? If you need to do a join expression, maybe you don't have foreign keys everywhere. This is when you can open up the joined expression screen and you can use any fields from the two tables you're trying to relate and all of the available functions. This also introduces the first time we're seeing variables. Now, we haven't created any yet. We'll be talking about those a little bit later, but we can use variables in here too. So I can still come here and build my joins. I'm going to remove that, say add my join condition. And this is country ID to country ID. And there is our beginnings of our data model. Again, all physical objects at this point, we are just all doing joins. I'm just going to go ahead and save that. When I close this physical diagram, and that's the other nice thing, for anyone that's coming from the client administration tool, you don't have to worry about screens popping up on top of other screens and popping up on top of other screens. You can just have all these tabs open from all the different layers at the same time. It's very convenient. Can also kind of close all of them at one time. So at this point, I'm still in the connections tab. If I come over to my physical layer, you can see this rendering tree has all been kind of updated. Both screens are always in sync. But I want to move on to the logical layer. And let's take a look at what we'll be doing there. For the logical layer, this is where we build business models, right? These are models that are going to answer a specific set of questions for a specific set of users. Within there, we can create hierarchies. We can put some, this is where we might put some data filters on some of our objects. We can add calculations, level-based measures, aggregate our data. We can do row-level security, and we can also take a look at the logical diagram. On the physical layer, we had the physical diagram, so now we have the logical diagram over here. So that's where we're going to be taking a look now in the logical layer. So first, you create a business model. And we'll just give it a name. We'll call it sales business model. And in these business models, any data coming from the physical layer can be added to this business model, right? So if you have multiple connections in here, we only have one that we're using, an Oracle connection. If you had another Oracle connection or a non-Oracle connection, they can all be pulled into this layer. Now, this layer is where you do most of your work. Just to level set everyone, physical layer, you spend a little bit of time. Presentation layer, sometime. This is the bulk of your time that you are in here building. Now, some basic info here in the general tab. We go to the logical. See, it even tells us where to drop facts and dimensions. So we're going to do what we did, like the connections. We're going to go to our physical layer, and we're just going to drop all of our objects, our dimensions and our dimensions, our facts and our facts. It will bring over the joins, right? So it has all the joins at any time. And if I come over to my logical layer tab, they're already going to be there. We can, of course, look at the logical diagram now. So the logical diagram is also there to help you simplify sometimes your physical layer, right? And there are a lot of tips and tricks to combine different objects of here. You might have 3 different tables that are all different sets of attributes talking about one entity. You can join them here to make your life easier. And I actually want to kind of show you that really quickly before we go too far. This countries tab, this is really part of customers, right? And I don't need both of these here. I just really they're part of customers, so I want to be part of customers. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having this countries object, I'm actually going to delete this from here. And I can just right click most of the objects. If you double click, it will open up the tab and any properties, but you have right click options on almost every object over here. I can say delete countries. And I'm going to actually go into my customers now, and I'll walk through these in a minute. But under sources, you can group multiple different physical objects. So I'm going to say add physical table, my countries. And now both of these, if I look at my columns, it has all my normal customer information and my country information down here. So pretty nice to be able to do that. And now when I go to my logical diagram, it looks a little bit simpler. Again, sometimes you can't make it simpler, but when you can, that's where the sources can help you out. So now it's a little bit simpler. So I'm going to shut that for a second. Actually, I'll keep customers open. Let's walk through these tabs. So for a dimensional object in the logical layer, this is what you have for you. You have your general tab, and you always want your primary key there listed. You're going to have all of your columns. This is where you're going to do all your aliasing, right? So in a few minutes, we're going to be doing our aliasing, our aggregation. We'll be removing columns we don't need. This is where you do all that work. Any joins that you have. Now, again, I don't have many joins coming from this table. Most of the joins are coming from our fact table, which is why nothing is listed here. We talked about our different sources within here. And one nice thing is, if I look at sources, and maybe I want to view them, couple things here. You can actually do data filters on here. So these data filters are not, basically, if you put a data filter on this source level, no data is going to get past it. So there might be a few elements we're working on customers. Maybe there's a few elements and rows of customers I don't want ever to get into the model. This is where I can come down here and add something to basically say, no, I don't, one of my categories, I can come here, I can get my columns, and I can just say something, something equals or doesn't equal this. And you will limit it from the entire model, which is you're going to need that in some cases. So that's where your data filters are, the bottom of your sources. We have our hierarchies. We're going to go back there in a few minutes. And then we have our data filters. Data filters is for your role level security, and it's done by an application role. So let's say, for example, I'm actually going to switch this. I'm going to go over to products. We'll close this. So let's say we only wanted a certain OAC group to look at a certain category, where I could come over here to data filter, and I'm going to look up some of my custom application roles. I'm going to say my HR compensation folks. I only want them to be able to see products. Let's do that equal 201, right? Or maybe there's a group you want them to see everything but 201. So this is an example of data filters, but row level security that are applied by your custom application roles. And of course, as you can see, you can add lots of them here. Now, there are also ways to use control tables within here if you don't want to use this method. So you can add control tables using the current user or setting variables to do a lot of this limiting of data. But this is one method for that. And this is typically done on the logical layer. All right. So before we get into hierarchy, let's just clean this up a little bit. First of all, I'm going to get rid of most of my IDs. So I can multi-select here, right? Delete those stuff. You can always get it back if you ever decide you need it there again. You just pull it, you drag it, right? You go into your physical layer. I could go back into my products and I could drag any column I just deleted back right within there. It's all you need to do. And I also advise don't bring in anything more than you need. Don't bring over everything. Bring over small little amounts of data at a time. Make sure it's working and then slowly layer onto it. So for example, I also know I don't want any of these columns in there. I'm going to say, yep, delete those. And this is where I can click on any one of them, give it an alias. I can say product subcategory or get rid of the product altogether. Maybe down here, I just want to say description. So we're not going to go through and alias all these, but this is typically where you're going to do it on this layer. Now, one other thing I forgot to mention is you see these names that came over from this products table. If I go to my physical layer and I open up products, just asking me to save. Look at my names, right? They have the underscores. They're all uppercase. So how did they get to at least this method? That's because over here on the right-hand side under preferences, I've turned on my logical layer, automatically rename objects. This is such a time saver where when you drag objects from, actually, I'm going to turn this off for a minute and I want to make sure everyone is aware of this. And I'm actually going to close all this, open up our logical layer. I'm just going to delete products for a second. I'm going to say right click delete. And now I turned off that feature. So now when I bring in products again, it imports it. And when I look at them, look at the names. They come exactly how they came from the physical layer. Now, if I delete that one more time, I turn back on my preferences. And what I want to do, you can build your own little scripts here. I want to change each underscore to a space. Then I want to lowercase everything, and then I want everything to be capitals for the initials. That's it. So now when I drag this back over again, my products is going to apply that, and let's open up products. And there we go. So nice little time saver there. I want to make sure everyone was aware of that. Again, I'm just going to delete these objects. I know I don't need them. Typically, you would delete your IDs unless there's a reason why your end users need to have the IDs. So I'm not going to go rename the rest of them, but you get the idea. You can come in here, alias it, do other sort by in here, and we'll come back here in a minute and look at calculations and aggregations. So first, let me save this, and let's do aggregation quickly. We're going to go into our sales table, and we can look at quantity sold. So you do have to set an aggregation. I'm going to say sum there, and I'll show you sales in a minute. There's sum. I'm going to go to amount sold. I'm just going to say sum. I'm actually going to get rid of my ID columns. Oops. Save this. And now right there, here's my new F1 sales. See, you can see these are now measures. My IDs are now gone. And of course, I'm actually going to change this back. I just want this to be sales. because we want to alias this nice over here. Save that. So that is an example of me just setting the aggregation for my different measures. Now, let's go back into sales for a minute. And let's go to columns. And what if you want to create a new column, like you want to create a calculation? Well, this could be my new calc. Come down here and create a logical expression. And now look at that. You get access to all the elements within your current model. I could do something very simply. Might not make sense, but just so you get the idea. Validate, that could be an expression. I can use any of my functions. Once again, I could use variables if I set them up. I'm hoping I have time to explain those for a few minutes at the end. Again, very powerful there. But I can now say, I have a new calc, right? That is basically going to roll up those values. And now within my data model, I have a new calc. Now, this is also where you might be doing, you'll add all the calculations, right? A data model is one of those places where all calculations should be in the data model. They shouldn't have to build them outside of it unless they're truly one-offs. So you want to build up as much logic as you possibly can within here. Now, there is also this aggregate by a level. Well, levels mean hierarchies, right? So I am on a fact table. So fact tables, you cannot build hierarchies off of fact tables, only dimensional tables. So let me go back to products and let's build a hierarchy. So you have a couple different types here. You have a level based, which is where every level kind of has a, like geography would be level based. What the one we're going to do where we basically have all products, categories, subcategories, and then the products themselves. We have time-based, which is a specialized level-based one. Once you do a time-based one, that opens up a lot of other time series calculations. And then we have parent-child. You can think of that as like within organizations, where everyone is kind of equal, and sometimes you're a parent and sometimes you're a child. We're just going to do a level-based one really quick. We're going to come here. We can support ragged and skipped hierarchies. But at the top of it, we basically, what's our hierarchy name? We're going to call this products. Just going to put there for hierarchy. We have a top level, right? Everything rolls up to this level. That means there's only going to be one element at this level. At the bottom level is our lowest level or our primary key in this one, which is product ID, right? And there will be more elements at this level. But if I go to total, I want a category one. So I'm going to call this category. I do know how many categories I have. I have 5 different categories. My primary key for my categories. Oh, see, I did remove my some ID columns here, so I will need to actually bring them back for this. Let's go to products, and I need subcategory ID, subcategory ID, and prod category ID. And we can remove them after. So category ID. What do I want to pull from? I want to show category name. And then you associate what is else on this level. So for a category, product category, they are all assigned kind of to that level because they're all at the category level. We're just going to create one more subcategory. I believe this one had 22. Subcategory ID. We want to show subcategory name. And we're just going to, again, assign subcategory, all at this level. And then for the detail, I think I had about 100 elements at the product level, and we want product name to be displayed there. At this point, we'll just save it, and we have now created a hierarchy. We'll check that it's all valid in a little bit. But once you have a hierarchy in here, I want to go back to sales. And I want to go back to our quantity sold. And I'm going to add another new column. And this is going to be amount sold by product category. Here, I can basically say, what is my aggregation rule? Well, once I get my logical expression, or I could say physical, I could say it's coming from sales. I want amount sold. We know where it's coming from. I want to aggregate it as a sum, but I want to aggregate it at a level. Now this is going to open up all the hierarchies I have available. So I only have one hierarchy, but I want it at the category level. So what this is going to do is going to allow it to roll up to the category level for some of your analysis, right? So you can do this. This is very common on time where you only want things to roll up to a certain time level. And this is how you do level-based aggregations. So again, you first need some hierarchies, and once you have those, then you can add these level-based aggregations. So I'm going to pause there for a minute. And let's see. Few other things I'm just making sure I'm covering. I'm not missing anything here. Now, one thing we can do here is if I come over to, let's go over to products, and I'm going to come over to product description. I'm going to say show lineage right there. So we have a whole lineage viewer in here, right? All these are one-to-one, so they're very simple. They don't have a lot of transformations. But if I do a lineage viewer on my new calc, show lineage. Oh, I forgot to add it in there. But what would happen is you'd have multiple lines going back to the different fields. So you can see the full lineage. And once we add the presentation layer, right? In the presentation layer, you'll be able to have lineage all the way from the front end, all the way back to the physical layer. So very important feature within here to be aware of. All right, so let me just quickly alias the rest of these tables. I'm just going to call this products. I'm not going to bother aliasing all the rest of the columns. We'll call this one time. Actually, we'll just call this one calendar. And our last one is customers. Beautiful. All right. So at this point, we've done a lot within the logical layer. Again, we've just scratched the surface of what we can do in here. And then, like I said, this is where you're going to spend most of your time within the modeler. We can close all of these tabs for now. So you can see we have, again, our physical layer with our aliases. We have our logical layer that have all been now mapped and joined. So we've already seen this. And remember, we simplified it by putting our countries within our customers. That we'll show you again in a minute. So really, it's kind of time to move on to the presentation layer. Now, the objects created here, which are called subject areas, are the objects that developers and analysts will interact with when building dashboards and workbooks. That means we want to do any final organization and grouping to make it as intuitive as possible. This is also where we can add object level security, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. Now, a presentation area or a subject area can only pull from one business model at a time, right? So you have to select one business model. Now remember, physical layer, you can have as many business models as you want, but a subject area will only be on one business model. Now, there are going to be times where you'll have one business model, but you might create two different subject areas because they might be slightly different. And that's why a lot of the same functionality that's available in the logical layer is also available on the physical layer. And I'll show you that in a minute. So we are going to call this corporate sales. We only have one business layer. And now we've created our first subject area. So this subject area, this, the name of this, if I were to create a workbook, that name right there, that is a subject area. These are all my data sets in here. That is the icon of a subject area. And that is that, so they will see that name immediately. Remember, I can do that and I'll get all of my layout right there. So we're going to call it corporate sales. We're not going to touch much on this screen right now. We're going to go over to permissions. Permissions at the highest level. This is who can access this, right? I'm going to say for the time being, I only want BI administrators while I'm testing this out. They are the only ones that have read-only access. You can obviously have stuff that has no access. So this is the first step of locking it down at the highest level, right? You can either see this whole thing or you can't. Now within here, once again, we want tables. So we go do what we did, well, exactly what we've done before. We can take all of these, drag them over. At this point, we do have a working subject area, but we might want to clean it up a little bit more. And I want to show you a few other tricks here. So let's go into calendar. Now, typically, I would have cleaned out a lot of this in the logical layer. They all would have been aliased. All my IDs that I don't need would have been removed. But you can do this here. And again, the reason why you can also alias, if I click here, a lot of the same features, you can alias here, you can delete here, is because if you have two similar subject areas coming off the same business model, you you might need slightly different naming conventions for some of your objects. So that would be a great reason why you might do aliasing on the presentation layer versus the subject versus the logical layer. So things to consider there. Do you want to add a hierarchy to the front end? Now, hierarchies exist and allow for level-based aggregation as soon as you create them, but you can actually create them as an object within the front end. I'm going to go into my products, go to hierarchy. There it is. It's already been added. Even if I say delete, I could always say, oh, I went into card changes. I needed to go into my presentation layer for products. Hierarchies, there it is. I can delete it or re-add it right here. So that we're going to make that available. Again, we have all of our columns here. We're going to pretend that they're all aliased and all aggregated. For permissions, this is a permission right now. I can put a permission on a group and say, all right, my leadership cannot see no access to this whole dimension, products dimension. You can do that, right? You can basically say, I'm not letting them see. So this is object level security. And then you can go one step further. What if you have a few columns in here that you don't want a few people to see? Once again, it can inherit the permission of the table, but now I can say, for this one column, I don't want this group of users seeing this column. So you have full object level security across the entire data model. And of course, at the highest level, you just don't give them access to the data model. You can have data filters up here. Once again, if it differs from what the business model has. So you have permissions, your hierarchies that you're going to add, your columns, your general tab, and let's take one of our products here. See that right there is an object of that is our hierarchy object right there. And I can go to any one of these, show lineage. Now you're getting it from all three layers. Again, it's pretty easy right now. Mapping is one-to-one. But as it gets more complicated, this lineage viewer will come in more handy. And one other thing, we don't have a long time to talk about it today. We are running a little short on time. But when we are talking about having this as a multi-developer environment and looking at the markup language, every object within here, if you right-click, open an SMML editor, right? This is showing us the JSON for this product's object. And at any time we're in here, you can use this to edit. This is where, once it's in GitHub, you can use any IDE you want to model this. And if you're looking to understand the structures, we have the help here. They'll bring you right to the documentation on semantic modeler markup language, exactly how it works, how to work with it. So very powerful there if you want to actually programmatically build these out. And it obviously allows for the pushing of different branches so you can actually have multiple people in here at one time working on the entire model. So just want to kind of talk about those for a second. Now, at this point, we can say, oh, one last thing I want to do here is, what if I really wanted, you saw that nesting value before. What if I say I want to create a new presentation table? And maybe now, in this case, I do want countries in their own. Now here, I could go to my logical layer. And remember, I nested them in this customers one. But I could just say, I want these few ones in my countries. Now I have countries here, but I want countries within customers. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to nest it. And now it's nested. That's how you nest folders. So obviously you can rearrange these however you want. You can nest them right within here. You can only go one level nesting, but that is how you do it. And now that we've done all of this work, and I know we only got a minute or two left, you need to validate and then deploy. We have a built-in checker. So right up here in the top right, consistency checker, this will take a look at all of your warnings, right? So it's basically saying, I don't have a calc that is working well, right? My new calc. Well, I can always come back to corporate sales, this new calc, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to save it, rerun my checker. Oh, it's probably on the, oh, it's in the logical layer. Let's get it out of there. Let's go to sales. See, I didn't aggregate it there, so it is erroring. We'll delete that. Rerun this one more time. Nothing. We're good to go. Now, at this point, everything you've done has not affected anyone else in here. The moment you hit deploy, that is the moment that it is going to replace any other RPD in the system. Because really what it does is going to bundle up the SSML. It is going to turn it back into an RPD and load it onto the server, just like some of you might be aware of doing the admin tool. It does the same mechanisms automatically, and that when you hit deploy is just like deploying a new RPD and will wipe out anything else that's on there. So I know we're almost at time, and that's really everything I wanted to cover today. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended. And as always, I hope this was a good use of your time. I also want to say a big thank you to the entire team that helps put these sessions together.
Perfect. Thank you, Pete. Once again, I really appreciate your help and time with this, and I hope it was a good experience for everybody. Now, just a couple things before we go I know we're going to go a couple minutes over, but we'll just wrap things up here. Things to remember. We discussed an overview or a refresher of the Oracle Analytics Cloud and how it provides you with self-service governed and augmented analytics. And then we explored the core elements of the semantic modeler, including the physical layer to define objects and relationships, the logical layer to define the business logic, the presentation layer to create your subject areas, and then a little introduction to SMML, and we talked about GitHub there at the end. Now, if you want to learn more, we have many resources that you have access to, and that's including certifications in the top left, labs and free tier accounts down at the bottom left, documentation and best practices up at the top right, as well as a wide variety of YouTube videos and labs. We have a semantic modeler specific one there as well. And if you enjoyed this session and would like us to conduct personalized training sessions for your organization, you can email us at our personal training email, and we will reach out to you. Or if you want us to conduct just a hands-on lab, we have a newly designed QuickShot Live Labs for a more expedited hands-on learning experience. And there's also the Code Innovate program, which will help you co-develop a solution with you based off of your use case. And if you want to tune in for additional day one and beyond webinars like we had today, we have our core series, the Oracle Analytics Cloud series, which we have a couple more sessions on, the hands-on series to work through some labs, the Cloud Native Launchpad, the Cloud Security series, and the Did You Know series, where you can see what's new within OCI. And our next session will be OAC administration on July 7th, so we hope to see you there. Once again, thank you everybody for joining today's session, and I hope you have a great day.